Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from NASCAR.info coming at you after the conclusion of a thrilling weekend of racing at the Circuit of the Americas, where unofficially pending the results of post-race inspection, Christopher Bell has pulled off his second straight win, pulling off a road course win. I was about to say his first road course win, but he's actually won at the Charlotte Roval before. Tremendous battle at the finish here among many of the new young stars here. We saw a great race in the Xfinity series as well. I want to talk about both of these. Incidentally, if anybody can send me a link in the chat to a good page that has the race results. I know it's very early after the conclusion of this Cup Series race, but I don't know if anybody else has had this problem. I'm pulling up the NASCAR.com results, and it keeps showing Reddick as the winner, and it's got the order all screwed up. So I don't know what was going on. We did have a lot of issues in this broadcast today, the TV broadcast as well, with their leaderboard. I don't know if that was something else that was going on with NASCAR's deal there. It seemed like most of the time it was kind of working, at least on the online version there, but we'll see if that's kind of the story going along here as well. I got a lot of stories to definitely talk about from this race today, as well as the Xfinity race yesterday. We'll cover that as well. We'll go ahead and jump into that. I'm a little bit at loose ends here without that getting pulled up here in the meantime. But first and foremost, I mean, again, great battles throughout the field. I think the reconfiguration of this track using this short course, this is definitely the direction to go. I think it was very clear from the Xfinity race that we had yesterday. I wasn't sure how well that was going to translate into the Cup race today. It somehow seemed to bunch the field up a lot more. Obviously, it was more laps because the track was shorter. Made the track look a lot tighter. It's always had those tight elements there, especially on the back half of the track there with those carousel sections and so forth that the field is kind of working its way through to get to the finish line. I think that's great. Man, it was just so enjoyable. It felt like very much an old school kind of road course race, much closer to a Sears Point or a Watkins Glen versus something just kind of new and trendy. I was skeptical of it initially, especially with losing that long straightaway, that one portion, that kind of knife edge at the top part of the track. I think that made things really interesting, and actually made the track, have a really fast elements to it. It's been a while since we've had a road course besides Watkins Glen that's really kind of known for that aspect to it. Again, I was thoroughly entertained by both these races this weekend. And it was so refreshing after these back-to-back super speedway races and these last lap cautions and everything that's been going on with all of that back then. I think this was exactly what was really needed at this point. We saw between the Xfinity race being a very physical one, especially among the leaders. You got fenders pushed in, you got damage through a lot of the field there, and people trying to kind of keep their cars in one piece at the end. A lot of mechanical issues that came up yesterday. And then in today's race here, a lot of very clean racing. I mean, yes, there were some incidents along the way. Yes, there was turn one is always going to be a problem area when you have these cars kind of fanning out and all that. The best racing happens under the green flag. We don't need a bunch of restarts, and this is another good example of it here. You get the field kind of strung out and you have people able to work their way up there. I wish just we had the chance to see more of it here. I think this was definitely another perfect example of not just having great racing, but showing how the broadcast can hamstring an experience about this. And again, I'm hearing many more people pointing this out, and I'm glad it's getting pointed out because it's been a problem for a very long time. Again, when you have a tight battle up front, when at one point you have Shane Van Gisbergen and Kyle Busch battling neck and neck, trading it for the lead, and they're showing something else, or they're not showing a good angle of it, or they're not getting invested in it when it's happening, that takes something from the experience. When you have another battle where you got Christopher Bell up there now trying to get the lead from Kyle Busch, and the camera shot just disappears behind some grandstands, and okay, if that happens just in an instant and you change to another camera angle, that happens. But when you kind of stay on it there and then you just completely lose track of what's happening, it's absurd. It's absurd. We talk about lightning quick reactions at the officials here with the caution flags. And again, I did a video on that just this past week here to kind of talk about that even more. Having to be able to do it here with the broadcast team, there's much more resources you have to work with. And, everything else, you got a whole team of people that can actually coordinate and get a decent broadcast out. We saw that more with the CW deal there. It's unfortunate because I think there was so much more. I wanted to know much more of what was happening out there. I mean, thank goodness for social media that you can pick up some of these other stories along the way. But then having drivers come back up through the pack, Chase Elliott coming back from the first lap spin and a toe link issue to get into the top 5 there. This was another example, much like with the Atlanta race last week, where, yes, you have some good competition happening, but there's this massive disjoint from the booth, and I don't understand what it is. It's just, we understand what it is. Well, we know that it's a level of enthusiasm for sure, and I'm seeing this mentioned in the chats here as well. And we certainly saw that in the Xfinity race. Even there was more excitement in the reaction to a couple of go-karts bumping into each other in the infield on Saturday than there was for just about anything that happened in today's race. And that was just unfortunate. There's something about Harvick and Boyer where it's just offset, and I don't know what it is. Like, Harvick is just a little bit too reserved, which is strange, and I think he's just got that Cheshire Cat smile the whole time, trying to slip in, millennial language and stuff to kind of, be a little promo for, for the podcast he does. And then Clint Boyer, he seems like he's got the excitement, but he doesn't really have anything to say. And then, when Mike Joy uses a certain word, he just gloms onto it. And then suddenly the entire broadcast is about, what does that mean? And then you just got to slow everything down, and it just grinds down there too. And Mike Joy is doing the best he can to keep things on topic. But he's just one guy. And again, he's getting up there too. And I know that's frustrating. And, he's doing what he can, but that there gets to be a point where that gets to be too much, and again, I still insist that he's not the problem in the booth there too, but that aspect of it is, I think, starting to kind of show itself too. And it's too bad, because it's depriving us of some really, just really exciting action. I mean, again, we saw almost the same kind of race on Saturday, and it was even more exhilarating because you had the booth really into it. Even Adam Alexander, to an extent, where, again, I still think he doesn't gel that well with Kligerman and McMurray, that he pretty much steps aside and just lets the two kind of have at it at the broadcast, which is where it's at its best. But this one was just, it's so frustrating because, there was a lot you could see and a lot you could respond to, and you could kind of see things that are happening. You can see whether it's Connor Zilisch trying to come up from the back of the field and work his way back into contention, or just anything else that was happening out there. Again, Noah Gragson working his way back up there. There was so much that could really, there's a lot of potential there, but it's just not brought up to that level. It doesn't feel as important, doesn't feel as big as it really needs to. And this battle at the end, I mean, it was such a great classic battle. You have between 3 and 4 different drivers up there. You got Kyle Busch trying to end a winless streak, from after having just a disastrous year last year, being in this position a few times last season, and then having to, trying to pull off a win, and then getting run over there, in the closing stages, him running on older tires, Christopher Bell having a very fast car, but even then, he's not able to pull away from William Byron and Reddick, who are both past winners here at Cota. You have so much that's going on, and this all needs to be brought up and made interesting and made alive and really show, instead of just saying, wow, this is a great race. Wow, it's just this very passive kind of laid back aspect, really just emphasize everything that's going on here and why it's so big and why it should matter. And then everybody is then it's up to us at home. We can all say, oh, wow, this is a great race, which is, I find myself saying there at the end of this. Absolutely thrilling. Absolutely thrilling. I thought this was, if you had the CW booth in this race here, I think it would have probably felt even better in the Xfinity race yesterday. Because again, you did have this balance of just a couple of drivers that were just beating the tar out of their cars. And we'll talk about the Xfinity race. But in this Cup race here too, very clean, very aggressive racing. You just never knew until the very last time they came off the corner if Byron or Reddick was going to make the move on Bell. It was not known until very late in this race if Kyle Busch was going to be able to hang on to the end. And even before that, it was Shane Van Gisbergen and what his strategy was. And before that, it was him and Kyle Busch battling. I mean, there were so many great battles in pretty much every phase of this race, and there was plenty to work with. So that's where I really take issue with a broadcast that really, kind of slaps that shut there too. So that was kind of the issue that I would have from this. And but again, the racing itself, I've said it many times on here, especially in the truck series where the broadcast quality is even worse. We're having some of the best racing in a very long time in this. And I think this is where this has come from. I probably mentioned this before, but I think that during the Gen 6 era, and somebody else was talking about the Monster Energy era, even like the late 2010s and so forth, we probably went through a period where, the racing wasn't as competitive as it could have been. You had only a few different winners. You didn't have that many first-time winners. There wasn't a lot of new turnover with teams or rookie battles or anything like that. And I think that did have a negative effect on the broadcast. I think that they anticipate perhaps not much happening, and maybe they got lulled into the comfort of that it's just like, okay, well, do we really need to be like on the edge of our seat if there's not that many, lead changes in this segment of the race or that segment of a race? And we've started to turn the corner on that, especially, late, 2020, 21, 22, right around there. And of course, the introduction of the new car, completely resetting everything on top of having some new teams in there, but they need to adjust. That's where we needed to have, again, a new group that's in there. That's why I think, honestly, I think that something like the CW came around, it should have happened at least as far back as 2018. Because think about it, that's right after you had Dale Jr. and Danica Patrick retiring from it. And I know Danica wasn't successful in NASCAR, but if you remember back to that era, even with the NBC broadcast, that was still kind of the new group that was kind of returning into the booth there. She was still very much a focus of a lot of those broadcasts, and Dale Jr. was as well. And Jr. being in another phase of his career as well, towards the end of his career. But once that happened, it should have been entirely about emphasizing these new stars that have come up there. You always hear about, we have a star problem in the sport. There's nobody that's exceptional. We don't know who. It's because we don't know who these people are. They weren't developed over several years. We didn't have a good storyline developed, a good film reel developed from all these years since then. So I think if we turned the corner on that back in 2018, and with these new drivers that were coming in here, and again, you just think about all that happened in that era. That's when you had Bubba Wallace in the 43. That's when you had Ryan Blaney going to Penske. That's when you had, all of that. I think this era we'd be in a much better position now than they would have been otherwise, keeping things the same. And, I think NBC kind of, got a bit flat there, and they kind of, played down to the competition at Fox. And thank goodness we had Lee Diffie come in last year to finally elevate that end. And then again, I think that opened the door for what the CW decided to do with Kligerman and McMurray. And it's been great. And I think now the tone has been set, and we need to continue in that direction. So hopefully we get that direction, because again, this was great. I mean, I don't want to keep just saying that offhand. I mean, it was a thoroughly enjoyable race. And so much else that was going on. I can't believe the results here still show Reddick as the winner. What is going on here? Does anybody still have a link to the broadcast, the race results for the Cup race? I don't know if that's been posted on here. Pockrass being in St. Petersburg, I think that's kind of thrown things off here a little bit too. But I'm not seeing it on here. It's so frustrating because I like looking at the results to kind of guide the storyline here a little bit, and it's kind of hamstrung me. Let me try the raw feed, because that'll work. Okay, great. There we go. So Christopher Bell, your race winner on this. Again, tremendous effort for him and the Joe Gibbs Racing team. We had the freeze the field thing last week. I mean, no controversy here at all. I mean, my goodness, he just went out there, had the best car in the third stage for sure, was working his way behind Kyle Busch. And my heart breaks for Kyle Busch, because this was, I saw this being commented on social media before this, saying that this was probably his best performance in the next gen car. And I tend to agree. It's kind of hard to, think about other events in the past. I think, honestly, his performance at Fontana was pretty impressive when he got his first win for Richard Childress, right before that track closed down. I think that was, very much a a driver's race, and this was definitely, the same way, just in a different respect there, where, tires are wearing out. You got people that are catching up to you, and what are you going to do? I think he did a great job holding the lead as long as he could have done. Unfortunately, he falls back to the 5th spot here in the race results here. But he's got to feel very positive coming up to these next few rounds. You got Phoenix coming up. We got the West Coast swing closer to his neck of the woods there as well. Things could very well turn around for him there too. This was a very challenging race, and I think he distinguished himself very well in this. I mean, Kyle's, of course, had his own history with the road courses there too. Byron in second, Reddick in third, all of them within a half second of each other at the finish. Again, just a wonderful battle. This is the kind of racing, some people will look at NASCAR and say, okay, I want to see, 3 wide, huge pack and nobody can pass each other, and that just looks cool. That's what I think peak racing is. I think this is much closer. You get people battling side by side, hanging on to their cars as best as they can, rooting and gouging for any spot they can, but it stays green. We don't need multiple restarts. We don't need to freeze the field. Everybody just going at it. The best cars in the field the entire day, they're all trying to show what they can do. And I thought all 3 of them, and Kyle Busch by the extension, all 4 of them distinguished themselves very well in this. I was very impressed by that. And maybe that'll be the lingering response to these controversies over the cautions in recent weeks, showing like, hey, we don't have to wreck each other to actually put on a good show. They can actually put on a good show by just battling each other. And I think this is a very, very positive one, especially on a track that's so new to the Cup Series, made even newer by running the short course here. Absolutely fantastic. Chase Elliott in 4th. How on earth did he get back up there? This is another thing that Fox really should have covered. You have the most popular driver in the sport, wins that award every year, gets spun out in the first corner by, of course, Ross Chastain, and he takes the entire race to get back up there. And I don't even know if they even showed him at the end of this race here, but I mean, a tremendous effort to get back up there. These are the things you can make exciting. Just saying that phrase, Chase Elliott, 50, 60 laps ago was in 37th place. He was going to lose a lap, and now he's back up there in the top 5. Those things. I imagine the radio broadcast of this was really good. I don't know what it was. I'm sure some of you guys were listening to this as well. Shane Van Gisbergen as well. Great race he's had. I mean, not surprisingly, given, of course, his road course background. But again, doing the full season deal here this year, running, the traditional mix of, ovals and road courses in between. It's still good to see him step up here and have a great battle. I thought the battle he had with Kyle Busch was going to be about as good as this race got. And then having this battle afterwards too. Again, just tremendous. Very, very enjoyable on this one. I thought he did a fine job. Strategy didn't work out too well, and that sometimes happens, especially for road course specialists. I remember in 2003, Ron Fellows and Boris said being on the wrong side of a caution there. Although the Austin Dillon caution kind of brought him back into the pack there again. It just didn't quite work out there in the shuffle. But 6th place finish is still a fine run for the new program there at Trackhouse. The new 88 team, that is. Chris Buescher, Noah Gragson dropped back from 5th to 8th at the finish there. Fine run for him. Alex Bowman and Todd Gilliland. I saw this mentioned here in chat as well, and it is worth mentioning. 2 Front Row Motorsports cars in the top 10, and they're Todd Gilliland and Noah Gragson. That's amazing. Gragson won a West Series race at Sears Point, but I'm not one that usually thinks of him being very competitive at the road courses. It's certainly been a tough slog for him in these first couple of years. We've seen some flashes. I was very impressed with his run in the 10 car at Phoenix last year in the spring race. And the 42 car, he did the best he could there at the Legacy Motor Club in what was a very difficult kind of transitional season for that entire program. But then comes back in there and, running the 4 car out there. A fine job that Gragson put together. Alex Bowman as well. I have no idea how he got in the top 10. It seemed like he was in just every awful situation. The broadcast made it sound like his day was going way worse than it was. Harvick at one time saying that, look, you're having a bad day. It just gets so much worse. Here in this case, he ends up back in the 9th spot there. A tremendous resiliency for Bowman. Again, past road course winner with his win in Chicago last year. I thought that was good to see. Looking further back here, Michael McDowell just outside the top 10, Chastain up to 12th. McDowell and Hocevar just getting back into the mix, almost getting them both in the top 10. Hocevar continuing to have a strong start to this season is good to see. Then looking further back here, we saw Briscoe and Keselowski and others in the mix at certain points here, but usually in the middle of the pack. It seemed like whoever was going to be at the front of the field here more or less stayed up there, and that's where I think what led to this race being as competitive as it was, is that you had people getting up front and then staying up there long enough to actually kind of get the measure of each other and have a good race to the finish here. A lot of the drivers I'm seeing further back in the rankings, they more or less stayed back there as well. The race not having the highest level of adversity there, or attrition as well. However, there were a couple incidents as well. We do have to talk about Connor Zilisch. Now, this actually dovetails with another thing from last week, and I was going to set this up here a little bit. And the subject of hype came up this past week. I posted on social media last week after the conclusion of that Atlanta finish. And by the way, when that caution came out at the very end of that Atlanta race, first draft of the tweet I was going to put was just ha ha ha, just laughing my tail off, because they did hype that finish so much to an absolutely absurd degree, making a documentary about the 3-wide finish at Atlanta. It's like, where were you when time stopped? That kind of thing. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, it was a cool finish. You know, the race was messy and absurd, and the track design was an issue. And this year's race was, I think, significantly better, even in spite of the finish that happened. Just hyping this and so forth. And I said it was hysterical. And I think that was very much true. I mean, they hyped it during the Daytona 500. We don't know who's going to win the biggest race of the year. And it's like, they're still talking about like, oh, the 3-wide finish in Atlanta. Oh my goodness. It's like they practically guaranteed that there was going to be a 3-wide finish in that Atlanta race. And then not only did it not happen, but right when it was about to happen and you had the 3 guys up there, then the caution comes out and it doesn't matter. And in fact, the moment of caution was before, like right when it was kind of setting up, when Christopher Bell was still the leader. Now, I'll admit that my sense of humor is not going to be everybody's sense of humor, but I think a lot of people, when presented that, would view that as funny. We're not talking about the accident that Josh Berry was in. And in spite of that, actually, I waited until after it was clear that Josh Berry was okay to actually even post that. I know there were some that were trying to make it sound that way, but I didn't appreciate that, because honestly, on this show, especially on a lot of this, we talk a lot about the safety aspects of the sport, especially the safety aspects of this car. I think enough needs to be made about the fact that this car keeps ramping over the top of these other ones. We saw it back in the Clash. It came up at Daytona in the Ryan Preece wreck, and of course that's making its rounds on social media. And then we saw it again today between Connor Zilisch and Denny Hamlin. Is there going to be any discussion of that? Yeah, maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's just got to wait until it gets really serious, like the concussions from a couple years ago or the fires that happened in these cars afterwards. So we'll see what happens on that end. But yeah, I stand by it that, it was hysterical when there was that much hype over this finish. And I think that was the appropriate way to describe that there. Now, hype, it can take many forms. Certainly Connor Zilisch was probably the subject of this. The hype that I particularly find that's really hilarious is when it's really unwarranted. I think there's a lot you could point at from that 3-wide finish of Atlanta that, probably shouldn't, it's like, okay, well, that's kind of its own thing in its own little world here. I've heard some saying that maybe, Zilisch is overhyped for how, exciting his career has been. I think that's quite the opposite. I think he is a tremendous talent, and I think anything that he does in NASCAR is worthy of getting a lot of attention. That's where I think the difference is here. And it's unfortunate what happened here, because of course, I'm wearing his shirt here today. It's not been good luck for Zilisch here today. He ends up being your last place finisher pending the results of post-race inspection. But again, this is the opposite side of it there too. He put on a tremendous run out there. He almost replicated what he did in the Saturday race yesterday. He was in 14th place when he got in that incident with Daniel Suarez there coming out of the smoke. And, again, he just went this way instead of that way. laid a tire right in every other situation, including the altercation with Denny Hamlin that already put him at the back of the field at the very beginning of the race. Actually, an even deeper hole than what happened in the Xfinity race, where he had actually led for a while and then had the pit road infraction in the Xfinity race. In this one here, I thought he showed, tremendous ability to get back up there, was able to close the gap, didn't need the stage cautions in order to kind of get back up there, but that certainly helped as well. But I thought he did a fine job out there, and I'm very excited to see wherever he runs next. I hope he runs Sears Point. I would love to see what he can do out there, especially after Shane Van Gisbergen was so convincing in the Xfinity Series race last year. And, again, we saw a very similar battle at the end of the Cup Series race last year with different strategies, Martin Truex and others in competition there. So it's unfortunate. I know there was a lot of hype, at least on the end of sports betting there. A lot of money, I imagine, changed hands when people were predicting he'd be the race winner today. I don't think that was an outrageous thing to expect, especially with Van Gisbergen's win in his series debut, and Zilisch being, again, winning in his Xfinity debut at Watkins Glen, winning the pole for his Truck Series debut, and then coming back from a mistake at the beginning of that race. I still think he did a tremendous job out there, and I'm very excited to see what he's going to be doing coming up here, not just in the full-time the Xfinity Series, but however many other Cup races he does. And I think this is going to be great. And we'll see through the Xfinity Series schedule how well he's able to adapt to the oval tracks, given his just fantastic road course resume. That is the hype that's well worth it. And I don't think I think hysterical would be an inappropriate term to describe what happened with his wreck today. I think that, again, this stuff happens. You hear about some drivers that, you hear about Ricky Rudd famously finishing 11th in his Cup Series debut way back in the day. But you've had other drivers that have been very big names in the sport, like Jeff Gordon having a roll of tape coming off his car and Davey Allison running it over at Atlanta, and then ending up getting crash damage towards the end of the race, finishing in the 30s. Who would ever know how well he was going to perform the rest of his career? That's just kind of the way that all plays out. Tony Stewart had engine problems when he started outside pole at Daytona back in 1999, had a tremendous career as well. So this is just the way that comes out there. So that is going to be the article. We're going to, again, pending the results post-race inspection. Very interesting that it happened 11 years to the day that the number 87 finished last in a Cup Series race. The last time was when Morgan Shepherd broke his own record, or I guess broke whatever record. It was either McGriff's record or his own record of being the oldest last place finisher in Cup Series history, just over 72 years at that point there. He was driving a number 87. Probably surprising to both newer fans and older ones that Joe Nemechek never actually won in that 87 car, given how long he ran it in the 1990s before he went over to the Sabatas team, and then how much longer he ran it as his own operation in 2009 and so forth there. And, had some other good efforts out there. He did win in the Busch Series. We've already seen that number go to victory lane once in 500 days, and I believe he won it with it in the Truck Series, if not as a driver, certainly as an owner when Ron Fellows was driving it. Again, conceivably, we could have had, if the 87 did win today, it would have been the first win since the days of Buck Baker way back in the 60s. Here in this case, first last place run, 11 years to the day of the last time that the 87 finished last, and that's one of the storylines here as well. And like Shane Van Gisbergen, won an Xfinity race the day before, finished last the next day. I don't know how many other times. I believe it was Steve Malazzi was asking how often that's happened. I don't have that number in front of me, but that'll probably be another thing I'll be looking at for the article coming up here as well. But let's see here. Did Jimmy Johnson crash out of his first Cup race? I believe he spun. Oh yeah, he crashed in the 2001 Charlotte race. Yeah, that's right. He did. Sean Cedar, senior comment on that. I was thinking 2002 500 he spun, but that wasn't his first start because he had those few in 01. An unfortunate deal there for Zilisch, but again, it's going to be an exciting career. I'm glad he's okay. Glad Suarez is okay. Is anybody else worried about Suarez here in these last couple of weeks? I know there's been a lot of intensity around that seat, and he's going through the same thing we saw with Alex Bowman last year, where it's like, okay, well, everybody's already trying to say, well, this person needs to go here and this person needs to go here. And, there's only 36 chartered entries and we don't have enough room for everybody. So who's going to lose their seat? It used to be that could happen. Now these days it has to happen, much like how teams get started. Suarez here, I thought in the Atlanta interview he had last week, I was downright concerned. He just looked lost and just kind of, just completely out of it. And I was like, oh my God, like what happened here at this end? We didn't really see that as much in his interview this week, but this, I think it's much more just, the frustration of just 1 week to the next. And I hate it for him. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes there, or if he can kind of turn this around and maybe get some good runs here on the West Coast swing. We'll find out if that's going to be the story one way or the other. But I think that's one thing that's worth looking at here at the same time. But Suarez being your next to last place finisher. Austin Dillon ran off course, ended up drawing a critical caution. The closing laps of this was not his fault. Denny Hamlin was out of control going into 6A and got into him. Put him off the track there. Ended up causing an incident there. Dillon ended up dropping out of the race there, looks like in the 35th spot. Ty Gibbs and Ryan Preece. I saw somebody mentioning Preece earlier. Just a rough deal for him after winning one of the stages. Kyle Larson, I'm seeing people requesting what was going on with Larson. I'm not sure. I think Steve Toronto was posting some videos from online there. It looked like there was a miscommunication in the pits for sure about that wheel coming off there on the back half of the course. And, of course, a very costly penalty that pretty much took Larson out of contention. He did spin afterwards there, too. Just a disastrous day for him, especially, you really expect, the Hendrick teams in particular to do so well here with Byron winning the race last year and Larson having his own road course pedigree. This was just a day to forget for him. We saw in a lot of cases, his case as well here, where once somebody dropped off the tail of the pack, it seemed like they really had, no chance to get back up there. That's why I think Chase Elliott's rally was so impressive and a couple of the others. But you had guys like Ty Dillon that had some right front damage after the altercation with Austin Cindric. Wasn't able to work his way back up there. AJ Allmendinger, I don't know what happened to him. He dropped back to 30th. I saw he was battling Van Gisbergen for 7th or 8th, the final laps. Suddenly he dropped back. What happened? I don't know. Gonna have to just look through, these replays, I guess, on Max or whatever. Chalk these up as other storylines that Fox just completely missed. No idea. I don't know what happened to Allmendinger. I don't know what happened to Preece. It's just absurd. I know Cole Custer had an extended stop at one point. That dropped him back in the order there a bit. But again, it's just unfortunate. I mean, they had the gall at one point to have Chris Myers and Jamie McMurray on pit road and saying, oh, we're keeping an eye on things on pit road while they're just standing there with their back to the track and everything. It's like, okay, like, come on. Like it's just absurd. I don't want to hammer that too much, but I mean, it's so frustrating because so much else about this race. There's so much good that happened from this race. And again, I think the broadcast was really, really holding it back. Thank goodness social media exists. And maybe they're too dependent on that. Maybe they're like, oh, well, so-and-so will pick this up, or so-and-so will pick this up. We don't need to do that. It's like, no. That's sending the wrong message. You still want those moments, and the broadcast plays such an important role in that. So that's another part of that there too. What other drivers to talk about from today's race here as well? Blaney and Logano being back in the pack. Cindric too. And again, what was going on with the Cindric and Ty Dillon incident? That was just absurd. And no penalty apparently for that. I know Cindric briefly dropped to last place, but it didn't look like it was the result of any actual penalty there. You certainly, you swerve into somebody and like hook them, especially on a straightaway there. It could be a very serious incident there. If we want to talk about safety, if we want to talk about putting drivers in danger, that was very strange. And especially, Cindric's own background on the road courses, I'm sure he had frustrations, starting as far back as he did and being in the back there. I mean, it was a battle for, I believe, about 30th when he and Dillon were colliding. But you just don't do that. That was pretty egregious. Even if it was a thing where they're leaning on each other and just racing hard for position, and trying to get back up there. Yeah, they ended up pushing each other off in the grass a bit. But there's other ways to handle that. If you want to bump the guy or something like that, that's one thing. But, hooking somebody like that, yeah, that should have been handled differently. I don't know if anything is going to come of that. I doubt it. It doesn't feel like that's usually been the way NASCAR's handled it unless it's something, extremely egregious or has to do with the finish, like Austin Dillon's deal at Richmond last year. Yeah, that was another one there too. Matt Jones, you mentioned Justin Haley dropping out of the top 10. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Back to 16th spot. I mean, there's must be so much stuff that's happening. And if you're, I feel like, and that's the frustrating part. I wanted so much more from it because what we did see was already great. I mean, it really was. But I think that if we had everything else, I mean, you should want a race where like, so much is happening, where too much is happening almost. Yeah, I don't know what was going on, honestly. I don't. It's very strange. I didn't watch the IndyCar broadcast today, so I can't comment on the way their broadcast looks. I'm just cracking up about Will Buxton's tweets there about him getting used to American snack food and everything like that. So it sounds like he's having fun over there. Regardless, it's I don't know. It's frustrating. It's frustrating because again, I think they put on a great show out there today, and I'm excited about doing this. Heck, Last Bro actually almost attended this race. He was on a business trip with my dad this weekend, and they almost took a detour down there. Actually, and I was definitely among the group that, I was okay with the old Cota track, but I wasn't a big fan of it. This wasn't one I really had circled and saying like, oh, well, we really need to do this one. After this one, this has certainly changed. This is one where it's like, oh yeah, we need to do this. Like this looks like a lot of fun to do. Like, I mean, and that's something, hopefully he's convinced other people too. I think, so I think that'll be, the other part to look at it. Let me go into the Xfinity Series race here as well. Connor Zilisch again. And I mean, my goodness. I mean, first race I ever attended back in 1992 was Ernie Irvan jumping the start at the beginning of the race and then coming from the back of the field back to the front in a race that actually set the race record at the time too, had very few cautions in it. Connor Zilisch in this race just put on an absolute clinic, looked like he was going to be unstoppable from the start, had that penalty when he went onto a closed pit road, dropped him back in the pack, worked his way through the field, admittedly made some aggressive moves. That incident he had with Corey Heim, that was a bit over the top, and certainly it damaged his car significantly, really put him in a position where, yeah, that could have just completely gone away, and it was going to be a really big issue out there. It was, and it could have gone away, and he's got the fender rubbing, and he's hanging on. And then who's his big contender? I mean, I would have fully expected it was going to be William Byron from having that Hendrick car in there. It's like, okay, of course it's going to be him. But he was in a whole other zip code. But who was his closest competitor? Carson Kvapil. My goodness, Carson Kvapil, since getting into the series here last year as a part-timer, and that Dover race that he could have very easily won, just didn't work out. Things happen, inexperience, other drivers, running over each other and so forth. Really distinguished himself, and I'm so glad he landed that ride in the one car. I was not expecting him to be really much of a factor. Getting a top 10 and probably just, punching in and then moving on to the next route, especially with his experience. But he had an absolutely tremendous battle with Zilisch. He deserves so much credit for how well he did. I mean, I think back to that combined with his Daytona run, Kvapil's that is, where he had the rear of the car taken off, and the team did, I mean, again, this was a team and driver combo in both cases, really. Getting him back out there with a new rear piece on the car and being right back up there in the battle for the lead. I was so impressed with that back at Daytona. Man, he could be, he could really take off this year. And I know that, Zilisch is getting a lot of that attention, and deservedly so. But if it becomes the norm, there's so many great pictures of that one car next to that 88 car and then battling each other at the end of that. If that becomes the norm, I think that would be really, really exciting in what's already been a great time for the Xfinity series, made even better with their broadcasts. I thought yesterday's race was at least on par with this one, and maybe a little bit ahead because the broadcast was so much better. I loved the excitement that McMurray and Kligerman had in the booth. They really kind of brought me into any of these moments. If there was like something that was really close, or the O's, when somebody would actually have contact or nudge somebody out of the way. And there were so many examples of that too. I felt like, there were still things through the field that probably could get caught a little bit better, like the Fox broadcast there, but that goes more to the production side there as well. But again, I thought it was a very enjoyable race there. Seeing Austin Hill look like he was going to be able to snipe the win there, he ended up getting caught by the other drivers behind him. Seeing Blaine Perkins have a great battle out there. Congratulations to him. First top 10 he's had in a couple of years. The Jordan Anderson team. He got some screen time on the broadcast, and a shout out there from the booth there for the battle that he was having with William Sawalich there at the end. Perkins is a driver I've always enjoyed following as well. I still have the diecast in the collection here from when he won that stage for Our Motorsports at Talladega during the Brandon Brown win. That was a huge moment. He was very close to doing that a couple times with the RSS car last year. Unfortunately, didn't work out. He had some beautiful paint schemes last year. Hopefully some more of that translates over to his ride with the Anderson deal. But a great run that he had out there as well. Other drivers with fine runs, Alex Labay in 14th. You always expect him to be good at the road course. Didn't see him as much of a factor in the top 10 in this time around, but doing as well as he did for the Bobby Daughter effort there. Ryan Ellis in 16th there as well. I think that's 2 straight top 20 finishes for him with the Atlanta race there, so fine job there too. Heartbreaker on the other side there for the Alpha Prime team. 2 of their 3 cars not qualifying for the race while you have William Byron and Ross Chastain in the race. And I got to admit, not a big fan of that. Not a big fan. I know that you got, big names out there, but big names were not what made this race great. It was entirely about this next generation, about these rising talents. They were the ones that put on the show. William Byron was eating Zilich's dust during that Xfinity Series race, and it was glorious to see. And, man, I mean, if there's ever needs to be another case made about just keeping the Cup guys out of it. I know they want to race whatever they want, but the Xfinity Series is not different enough from, the Cup Series. Even though the Cup Series cars are so different from the Xfinity cars, it's not different enough to not be unsportsmanlike. I'll just say it. I think it's unsportsmanlike to have Cup guys in the Xfinity Series. I've danced around that a lot on here. I don't think it's fair. I think that's the reason it doesn't compare well. It's why it doesn't make sense when you talk about it in baseball or Xfinity, or football or any other sport. It's like, it's why you don't do it. I really do think so. If these teams want to go out there and enter these races, they can do that. But I liked it when they brought in Raja Carruth over to the Hendrick team. I liked it when they, you would have other drivers get the chance out there. I mean, I think, and I'm especially perturbed still from that Atlanta Truck Series race last week where Kyle Busch was so clearly just playing with the rest of the field and just having a good time out there. It's like, okay, you're having a great time. Meanwhile, Stuart Friesen and these other guys, they're trying to make a living out there. They're trying to actually compete. It's not the same thing as like bringing Cup Series guys to your local dirt track. And it's just like it's having some fun out there and just, it just cutting loose. That's very different. I think in just these other NASCAR circuits that are developmental series where that development is so critical now because you only have the 36 chartered entries, assuming what happens with this lawsuit one way or the other, that's still really critical out there. But again, I hammer that point plenty of times too, and this was just more ammunition there too. But I hate it for Brad Perez and Parker Retzlaff. Perez is always really good at the road courses, and puts on a show when he comes out here to Sears Point, and has really become, very popular, I would say, from his social media posts and his performance on track as well. And Retzlaff was battling for the win when he not once but twice got wrecked off the corners there on the final lap of that race. The second one was just enough to actually take him out and cause a wreck that ended up being a controversial finish to begin with. A rough deal there for him. And then I got to be heartbroken as well for the Cope family racing team. Thomas Annunziata being very good in ARCA there and getting into, running some more of these road course races. Still very early in his career, still making a name for himself. I'm not saying anybody is entitled to these spots, certainly. But that one there, it was not about pace. They really had the pace to make the field, just had an oil pump belt slip off, and unfortunately that can happen just as easily to anybody, and it just so happened to bite them here. So an unfortunate deal for the 70 team after a fine start this year with Leland Honeyman. Annunziata and the team there end up getting sent home there with a mechanical issue during qualifying. this leads us to the other bit of a bizarre aspect there to the Xfinity race, and that was, of course, what the last place battle was. It was ended very quickly, about 3 laps into the race, with Carson Hocevar being swapped into the number 14. Now, this was a real... This raises a lot of questions, and people have approached this from a number of different angles. First, the common denominator of Carson Hocevar being the subject of anything after drivers were upset about how he was racing everybody in Atlanta last week when he was on his way to a career-best second-place finish. That's one aspect. But then in this case here, we had the news come out this week that Garrett Smithley was not going to run the number 14 car this week. He posted a video, I believe, on Monday saying that he wasn't going to be in the 14 car because he wasn't confident in his road course abilities. Again, I think that it would probably be best to run the road courses to try to get that, to try to improve that much there. I know he struggled at Sears Point when he came out here. I believe it was on the Cup Series side, or no, maybe it was still an Xfinity in that one too. I have to look at my results there. But regardless, either way, it's a difficult thing to get used to, and hopefully get some more laps out there. And I'm sure Trophy Tractor, would love to support him in whatever he can do because, that sponsor has been with him that long. But it's easy for me to say from this seat, maybe for a small team, that's a different factor, altogether. Maybe if you have a chance to get somebody out there, and again, another Cup Series regular, not really that crazy about that either, even somebody that's still pretty new to the circuit out there. That's the situation. But okay, so this happens. Hocevar gets in the car. He's fast in practice. He's about 10th fastest there. Qualifies about mid-pack. 4 laps into the race, he gets into the turn 6A, battling Jeb Burton going into the corner. They make contact. Hocevar's car goes straight and hits into a tire barrier, but it's such a low-speed corner, and he goes into the tire barrier that there's really not that much damage. Didn't even dislodge the hood. Any of these wrecks that's of any consequence that's going to, cause the radiator rupture, you'll see that hood just pop up. We saw just last week in the Cup Series race in Atlanta how much one of the teams was struggling to push down a corner of the hood to get it back in there. Now, yes, the Cup car is different from Xfinity, but again, the indication of severe damage usually is from something about that hood getting crumpled up or bent up or shoved out of its alignment there, because again, the attachments are all so minimal between the hood pins and the brackets and tethers and whatever else it's working on there. So Hocevar hits the outside wall. Now, apparently, according to his interview, he didn't have radio communication from the start of the race. Now, I don't know if this just happened right after they took the green flag or beforehand, but usually if it's before the green flag, NASCAR has you come back in there and make sure that it works. That's like having the transponder not work. I mean, talk about a safety issue. You got to be able to come back in there and get that fixed. If that was the case and he was just running out there without the radio working, I don't see how that was allowed to happen. I don't know if that's on the team's responsibility or NASCAR's or what, but the effect of it was unfortunately the same. Hocevar gets in what looked to be a minor incident, I think even from the driver's standpoint. Yes, you get into a tire barrier here, but it wasn't to the point of it, again, damaging the hood that much, pulling the car back out. It had just a little bit of damage in one corner of the car. But Hocevar climbs out. And of course, if it's true, and I guess we still got to give the benefit of the doubt to that too, that the radio was not working and he couldn't communicate with his crew, and the crew couldn't tell him. It was like, okay, try to drive the car around. He said he couldn't get the car refired, and he thought that contact was going to rupture the radiator. And indeed, how are you going to know that without getting out of the car if you don't have the radio to talk to? So I get that impulse. Maybe it was just an accident. Maybe it was an accident. He got out of the car because he had no other way of knowing, or if it was intentional because he had no other way of knowing. You could probably interpret it one way or the other, but the effect is the same. A car that probably could have kept going did not rupture the radiator. You can see there was no fluid from under the car. Gets towed to the garage area, out of the race after 3 laps, and it's just awful. I hate it for the Bobby Daughter team. I hate it for Garrett Smithley. I hate it for everybody involved in this. It's an unfortunate situation, and it definitely can't happen again. And on these road courses, I know sometimes, these road courses sometimes get the reputation. It's like, oh, well, maybe it's like a slower track and it's not as important. It can be dangerous on any of these tracks, in particular. And it was certainly, it was probably just as much a factor in even the initial incident where he ended up getting punted into the outside wall too. So I think that could be argued at the same time. So I hate it for him, for everybody involved there. Carson Hocevar ends up with the last place, finishes second already at Cota. He actually finished last in his Xfinity debut, driving another Bobby Dotter car a couple of years ago. That was with the transmission issue. I don't know if there's more to that story or not. I don't anticipate we're going to get more on that. But just on the face of it there's some things that, assuming whether it's true or whatever, that need to get figured out on that. I mean, you can't have drivers going out there with radio issues. Apparently, I guess there was a radio issue in the IndyCar too. But that'll be another one to look at. Yes, Bowser Jr. XD, thank you for bringing up this deal too. There was that controversy with Chris Wright and Josh Bilicki. I don't know if this got shown during the broadcast, unless it was something I just missed. But I didn't see what happened there. But apparently there was an altercation between Bilicki and Chris Wright. And if you remember, of course, a couple weeks ago at Daytona, there was another altercation where Chris Wright may or may not have been deflected onto pit road at full speed and did indeed slam into the back of Josh Bilicki's car, blaming the spotter at the moment. Wright did. But regardless, ended up with significant damage to the back of Bilicki's car. Now he apparently had another incident, and Bilicki was not pulling any punches on it here, in his frustrations there, and certainly understandably. If you ever met Bilicki, he's a very affable, very relaxed guy. It takes a lot to get him really upset. And from the post that we saw from the incident here, this one apparently really did ruffle those feathers there for sure. So an unfortunate, I hate it for Bilicki. He ends up where? He ends up 22nd there, probably at a track where, again, road courses are very much in his wheelhouse. Hope to have a good run out there. Ends up not really being much of a factor. And then Chris Wright himself back in the 33rd spot, finishing a lap down here in a race where pretty much everybody else that was running finished on the lead lap, actually. Now that I see it in the results here, too, gives another indication of how the 5 cars run was going here at the same time. It's too bad. I mean, we've seen things like the 1-800 Chris Wright decal that ARCA team ran on there before. Again, we talk about Carson Hocevar being a common denominator, perhaps in the Cup Series. This is a frustrating situation here as well on the Xfinity side. We know that Chris Wright was struggling in the Truck Series before when he was running the FNB sponsorship there. Again, still, stays with him, and that's a good asset for any of these teams. But if you start tearing up a lot of equipment and you're getting in all these altercations out there, how much more is that going to be worth here as well? So we'll see what the situation is here. I don't know how much more attention this is going to get, but having that many altercations between the same drivers, this many races in the year, maybe it is something where NASCAR needs to take Chris aside and kind of just figure out what else is going there. So that'll be kind of interesting to find out. I was disappointed to see Austin Green not as much of a factor in this race. He had an unscheduled stop at one point and dropped off the lead lap. Had to get that lap back there as well, and he still ended up back in 26th. This was the race last year where he really came on the scene with a strong run. I don't know if the Peterson team was involved in the 32 team this year, and that seemed to be a big help because, of course, the Peterson team is his Trans Am effort, and they actually brought out his car and everything. That's why he ran this bright yellow car, because that was going to be what the Peterson team was going to enter when they were going to run it as the 87. I contacted Jordan Anderson's team. I didn't hear back, so I don't know what the situation was on that. Hopefully we'll find out more information there. But one way or the other, they were just a bit off this time around, and they didn't have the same luck that Perkins had there in terms of having a good run. Indeed, Austin Green showing back in the 26th spot there too. Let's see here. Great job by Harrison Burton winning stage 2. I know that stage kind of had everything turned on its head there with the strategies and so forth. Harrison ended up having a broken axle there towards the end of the race there and ended up at the bottom half of the field. But again, I think that team, the AM Racing team, is indeed showing some signs of improvement. It was mentioned in the broadcast there as well. I mean, they saw it just as clearly here. They're off to a very good start. I think Harrison winning that Daytona race last year. And again, forget about the playoffs, forget about all that. But being able to get that win, that must put him in such a better headspace this year than it had from those last couple of years, struggling there to make the adjustments to the Cup Series. So good for him. I hope he has a very good year, and I hope that team has a good year this season. When I was thinking about that team doing my entry list article back at Daytona, I couldn't help but think, why is Brett Moffitt not in the Xfinity series right now? I know he's had other periods like this in his career where he's, out of one series and tried to get in the other, even been in the Cup series, had that great run in Atlanta and the old Aaron's Dream Machine a few years ago. But at the same time, I was writing my article and I was thinking, okay, I was talking about the 25 team and how they're trying to return to the form that they had when Brett Moffitt was in that car a couple of years ago, and they were, competing for a playoff spot that year, even though they fell short of a victory. And then I was thinking it also came up on the truck series side, talking about the expansion of Front Row Motorsports to 2 trucks and Moffitt driving that new 34 truck and immediately winning at Talladega. Again, I don't know what the situation is on that end, why, he's found himself being one of the people that isn't able to sit down during the game of musical chairs. But it really seems like, that's another driver I hope that really kind of finds his way back into the sport. I'm glad we're seeing drivers, in other cases here, still being able to find new rides and, stay in the sport here as well. But that's another one I'm hoping to see, the next chapter of his career here. Maybe get a resurgence like we saw out of AJ Allmendinger a few years ago and so forth. So we'll see if that's going to be another one to look at. But, when I was writing that article, I'm like, okay, Moffitt's here. It's like, well, where is Brett Moffitt? And then he wasn't in any of the rides I was writing about. So I thought that was strange. Is Cup racing going to be the one? I'm not sure. It was still kind of, I think some stuff that could be worked out in trucks and Xfinity, but I think he's too good to be sitting on the sidelines here. So, but you never know what people are dealing with. You never know what they're contending with at one point or another. Maybe there's something else that I'm just not hearing about here. So we'll see if that's the story. But Hocevar ends up being your last place finisher there, the number 14 car there. Your top, bottom 5 down there, Carson Hocevar, Baltazar Liguizamon in the 37th spot, Preston Pardus, Harrison Burton, and Sage Karam there in the bottom 5. Very much, I couldn't help it, I asked this on social media here the other day. I wonder if there is a situation where the broadcasters maybe have certain drivers in the field that, maybe they hope they don't have to say much about because they're not prepared or they haven't practiced enough saying their names or anything like that. And I can't help but think that because, of course, when Shane Van Gisbergen won his first race, it seemed like the only person that was ready to say his name with any enthusiasm was the guy from MRN, was Bagley there. He was nailing it every time. Meanwhile, you got Rick Allen and the others just kind of stumbling over each other like Shane Van Gisbergen. It's like, okay, come on. But I don't know. I think it's always fun when you have drivers in there, especially from other, countries and so forth competing in here. Baltazar being from Argentina here. Unfortunately he didn't have a good race. He had suspension problem, stalled him on the track there. I always remember back to my time when I was working in the emergency room. I registered patients. I wasn't a doctor or anything like that, but I registered patients. That was my job there. And you'd always have to pull up a person's chart. You get their name on there. And I always use that as an icebreaker. It's like, okay, whatever the person's name is, I'm just going to give it a try. I'm just going to kind of go in there and say, it's like, okay, I'm looking for da-da-da-da. And you just say the name. And then if you get it wrong, which, is going to happen, that's always a good icebreaker because a big part of that job is, upgrading their information. And then, persons can be more willing to do it at that point. So, I think that's always a lot of fun. I remember back doing the, what was it? The World Touring Car Championship. And they had a driver whose name was just like consonant salad, in there in terms of how it was spelled. I forgot what country he was from, but his name was Michel Nukier. And that one always stands out in my mind because the last name was spelled like N-Y-K and then the A-E-R, like the A-E where it's like merged together and stuff. And I'm like, and then you have people on the radio just like, they're just going to kind of be like, okay, well, we're just going to go with Michelle or whatever. But that's always interesting. So hate it for Baltazar for having a rough run out there. The 37th spot there. The Joey Gase team was really kind of trying to figure things out in general this weekend. Sage Karam got the ride in the second car. They ultimately didn't get any sponsorship for that car. I know they had the Eternal Fan logo and stuff on there, but that's all part of Gase's own initiatives with the organ donation and other programs there as well. Karam's another driver that deserves to have some great opportunities because he's been very close to pulling off some wins already in the Xfinity Series. Unfortunately, in here, he also joined Liguizamon in the garage area there, finishing in the 34th spot with transmission issues. This already in the article posted yesterday for the Xfinity piece there as well. I believe Jordan Teague's Designs was one that retweeted the picture there about the beautiful paint scheme on the 14, and being excited to see it there, but unfortunately it's in a NASCAR article, and I get it, last happens. That's the kind of the storyline and the slogan here for the website, so that's another part of that there as well. Alfredo had a good run, Andrew. Yep, no, yeah, I mean 21st in the running order there, but but looked good for portions of this this race as well. It was good to see. Yeah, again, just a really, don't really have too many other notes on that. Just really enjoyable. I think I touched on this a second ago. Preston Pardus had just a really frustrating day. Had an unscheduled stop as well. Ultimately had some mechanical failures, truck arms, something else in the suspension just completely let go, and dropped him back to the 36th spot there at the finish. Hopefully things turn around well for the rest of the road course schedule, because again, these are such demanding tracks on the mechanical portion of it, and always have been. But I think even with these older cars here, you're really still seeing that there at the same time. But we'll see if things turn around there at the same time. Let's see. That's probably most of the things I have on that. Just a doubleheader, of course, this weekend for the Truck Series or Xfinity Series, in the Cup Series. Before we go to Phoenix next week there. Laser Bro, thank you for the super chat there for $5. Hey, Brock, I missed most of the show, but I just wanted to say keep up the great work, and Ross Chastain is a terrorist. You saying this, not me. Thank you very much, Laser Bro, for the super chat there as well. Yeah, again, I think this was a very positive weekend, very exciting weekend here as well, and I'm going to be feeling very excited to see where we go from there as well. I want to also talk about here, where was it? I want to check it on my phone. When did I air that? Okay, yeah, I guess it was 4 days ago there. So again, I touched on this earlier. I did do an opinion video about the last lap cautions deal, especially after the Atlanta race. And this was a challenging one here too. I as you see from my channel, I don't do a lot of, as much as I pop off on my opinions on the stream here, I don't do a lot of opinion-based videos on the channel as much. It really takes something pretty extreme to really kind of get me to that point there. And indeed, I was actually already working on a project that I'm still catching up on here, still need to complete the edits on it. But I took a couple nights off this week and worked on that. And it occurred to me while producing it, it was like, okay, well, my viewpoint of it was, okay, you got people that want a caution at the moment of a wreck happens. And it's like, okay, well, that makes sense. You want a caution to come out when a wreck happens and make sure that everybody's going to be, that emergency equipment can come out there as quick as possible. And then there's another side of it. It's like, okay, well, let's just have the green flag, finish no matter what. Like you have a caution flag comes out, or maybe the caution button's disabled. Somebody was suggesting that. And it's like, that's a possibility. But you're not going to have a caution for anything. Like, any wrecks happen, if it's one or multiple wrecks, or they just keep crashing, you're still going to have the leaders actually get to the finish line, and then the race ends. I've always viewed those as kind of two opposing things, and I think that's the way most had. And that was kind of a realization I had while editing that video. It's like, wait a minute, these are all part of the same continuum. This is all part of the same deal here, where, okay, you throw it's like, okay, say you have the most strict rule in place, and it's like, okay, we're going to throw a moment of caution the moment you see smoke, like just a complete overreaction. Like, a car just got a little bit out of shape. Boom, caution comes out, race is over. Like it's just at that moment. It's like, if you have that every time, it's like, that's pretty extreme. And then you have the other side of it here where it's going to be like, okay, well, you have this wreck, you have this 5-car wreck, then you have a 3-car wreck, and then you have somebody else that's crashing across the finish line, and you still keep it green because, somebody's got to win this race. Okay, yeah, that's the most extreme thing on that end. But in between, there's different shades of gray, because it's like, okay, do you throw it the moment this car gets out of shape? Do you throw it the moment the car wrecks? Do you throw it the moment a car bounces back into traffic? And each one of those moments brings you closer to the drivers. If it's happening on the last lap, each one of those moments brings you closer to just the driver reaching the finish line. And Clint Boyer, I'll give him his due for this, for mentioning it in the pre-race today. Again, every wreck is different. Not every wreck is the same way. Not every wreck is going to require the caution to come out immediately. Maybe it comes out later. Maybe it doesn't come out at all. And so but that's the situation. It's a continuum. And, when we're talking about consistency, it's really hard to come up with consistency there because, again, if every wreck is going to be different and every danger is going to be, more immediate or not, and again, this is taking out completely the element of why are these drivers wrecking each other in the first place, which deserves, its own attention, or what's happening at the front of the field. Are we going to be able to have the leaders at least battle to the finish? Those are all like separate concerns entirely. It's just like, where do we land in this section? And that was kind of an interesting thing. Whenever I do, the other thing that concerns me when doing these opinion videos is I sometimes think that, okay, while I'm chewing this over and trying to come up with something on this, is the result of this just saying something that's just blatantly obvious? Am I saying something that's just like, well, duh, like, it's like at that point, like, why even post this? I was a little concerned about that in this respect here, but I think it was necessary to, because again, the discussion was, it's us versus them. It's this versus that. It's like, oh, if you don't want this, you must want this completely ridiculous thing. It's like, and I don't think it's that case. I think it's just like, I think it's not an understanding of common sense. It's like if you got a wreck and it's in the back of the field and leaders are almost at the finish line anyway, yeah, you pretty much don't need to throw a caution. If you have a car that flies into the catch fence at the start finish line and the leaders are in turn 2, yeah, you're going to want to throw a caution for that. But it's not always going to be that obvious. And I think if you add more rules, you're just going to add more delays, and that you're going to end up having a situation where you're going to have races end under green that maybe shouldn't have. And that's going to be the situation too, because I think, and again, as much as I do think that NASCAR still calls these wrong sometimes, and I think they did find a situation, they managed to find a way to do it in such a comically bad way in those first 2 races that, yeah, it ended up being something that was worthy of a controversy there too. That's where it does come up. So, yeah, but again, I think that was interesting. Hopefully people found it interesting, but I posted that on there and put my 2 cents on that. Still working on the next video. It's going to be a multi-part video when it is done. I've been working on getting the edits of all that set up here and getting that posted. And then soon we'll get that checked out. And I'd like to get it done. My goal is to have another video up at least have that out before I head out to cover the Rockingham and Talladega races in April. It's now March. I had to kind of get that through my head. It's like, that's coming up. So whatever I'm working on, I better try to wrap it up here at some point. So that's kind of going to be the focus between now and then. I'd love to get it out this month. I think that's possible. It's just taken so much longer than I thought it was going to. But I think it'll be worth it once we get there. What I want to do is I still want to make a video trailer for it. Those of you who are in the Patreon, patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock, you already know which video this is. So we'll get that information out here very soon as well. So that's another thing I'm working on. I'm also working on a channel trailer for the channel too. I have a rough draft of it. I noticed my shirt was covered in dog hair from taking care of the dogs this week. So I don't know if that's the version I want to go with, but maybe we'll do another version of it there down the line and kind of figure it out. So that'll be another one to look at there too. Let's see. Do I have any other notes on stuff from this week? I don't know if I do. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We got 78 viewers here tonight. Appreciate you guys checking that out. I like that Parker Kligerman's getting a die cast of the truck that he won with at Daytona before the disqualification there under circumstances that have already been revealed. So hopefully that will be really interesting if that reaches its number. In fact, speaking of diecast, I posted on eBay the other day at the store, and also you can check it out at my Twitter feed at LastCarOnBrock. I actually found one of the diecasts of the 71 car from Zane Smith last year. I had just pulled the trigger on picking up one of those online and paid a little more than I would have liked to on that one. Yeah, I went ahead and found another one. It's like, okay, I'll pay it forward. Let's just put it as a bid thing. And then if anybody is interested in it, they can pick it up too. And I'll throw something in there with that too to make it worth the while there. So if you're looking, if you're like me and you got your diecast championship standings, I have it off camera here, and you need a 71 car because McDowell's doing pretty well this year. Definitely give that a check out. And if you're interested in some stickers and so forth, I have those available on the website there as well. So Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I really have here at this point. I feel like I'm missing anything else. Feel free to chime in on the chat there if I'm missing anything on that. But we'll do this. Otherwise, I'm going to do some trivia here in the meantime. It is Oscar night. I know it already started pretty much at the start of the show, so we'll be watching a bit of that on tape delay. If you remember here from my past shows here, especially from Phoenix, I'm usually just a fan of that. I'm not a big, even though I'm from California, as I always say with people, I'm not from that part of California. Honestly, I always find, especially the last like 5 or 6 years, the Oscars are so hilariously bad, and the movies they pick to be nominees, it just reminds me of that third Naked Gun movie where, it's just like every movie is just laughably terrible. And oh my gosh, this year's is just really, it's really taking the cake. I'm starting to feel like this might be maybe one of the last ones that they do because the movies are just getting so bad. Hopefully things turn the corner. Like I'll be curious what next year's Oscars are going to look like if they even have them. Everybody's already talking about the Emilia Perez movie. I haven't seen it, but I feel like from the other reviewers, they've talked about it. I saw The Brutalist recently, and I didn't really say anything about it, but I didn't enjoy it. I saw what it was trying to do. I would love to see like a really grand, really amazing movie, and it aspired to that. But it was the writing was just not to that level, and that's so unfortunate. Because I think Adrian Brody is a great actor. Guy Pearce too, and all that. I can spoil it later on here in the show if you guys like, but I don't know if anybody wants to hear that. But I was not a fan. I was not a fan. It could have been so much better. But that's, again, if it wins, especially if it wins for editing or like, or for the script, I'm going to be like, man, I can't, unless those have already been announced. I don't know if they have. I'll catch up on that in a bit. But yeah, I can't help it. I studied in Orange County, so I'm a bit of I'm not the biggest cinephile out there, but whenever I see a movie that's bad, I get pretty outspoken on that. I have a much easier time writing an IMDb review than I do doing an opinion video on NASCAR. That's how easy it becomes at that point. But that was just absurd. So, yeah, it's unfortunate. So we'll do some trivia questions here, just to kind of wrap up the show here tonight. And let's see, just questions and answers I was doing here. So we'll bring this bad boy out here. Again, NASCAR pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Go ahead and mention in the chat which one you'd like. Again, NASCAR pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Those are the categories today here. I'm just seeing everybody's chat here at the same time. The Wild Robot, Last Bro said he liked that too. He saw that and said that was good. Another one I liked, I watched September 5th. I actually did that as a double feature with The Brutalist. And I like that. I like that one way more. Like I've seen documentaries on what happened in the Munich Olympics in 1972. And this was doing it from the perspective of the broadcast team, which was the sports broadcast team. For those of you who don't know, the Munich Olympics tragedy was a hostage situation. The Israeli Olympic team was taken hostage, and there was a long standoff. Ultimately, ended under terrible circumstances. But one of the way this movie approached it was there was a disjoint between the sports media that was there to cover the Olympics, covering the story, versus the news media that would actually cover like stories of terrorism or whatever was going on back at home. And there was an argument there about like, well, wait a minute, why are we going to send this back to New York when we're in Germany and you got people here with cameras and everything to cover the story here? And they're like, oh, you guys are sports guys. You're not here to, cover like real stories. And there was a real interesting, setup there. So I thought that was a really good movie. I really, I always hesitant to say enjoyed when it's something about something tragic, but that's obviously not what I'm meaning here. What I mean is that it really it was a perfect example of when the cylinders are all firing in media, when it's actually about trying to understand what's happening and actually putting, understanding what a story is, especially when it's developing and all that, and putting that effort out there, how important that is. Because now when anybody talks about what happened in 72, it's because of the sports desk that did it. and I know that, sports media can sometimes seem like, oh, this is just a, kind of a glamorous thing. It's just like, oh, you guys, this isn't real news. This isn't like really doing that. But no, I mean, when things get serious, and things do have a way of that happening, even in a much, much smaller, context of just the context of, when somebody gets injured in a sport or something like that. And then if something, even in that context, it gets important. So I thought it handled that question really well. I thought from my own standpoint, I took a lot from that. So, and again, had a good discussion from there. But again, my interest in movies, pretty much anything you see on the shelf back here, it's all over the place. It doesn't have to be something Oscar quality to be something I enjoy. There's a lot of action movies and Jason Statham movies. Talk about Jason Statham movies during the race today too. We had a discussion between Lastbro and myself about, is he just in car movies or is he just in action movies, and what's the difference? And it was an interesting debate. Actually had a good discussion of it here as well. So that'll be another one to look at. Which category are we looking at? Teams, tracks, wild card. We got 2 for wild card. I got 2 for drivers. Let's see here. Yeah, I didn't grow up with Star Wars that much. Like, I really didn't. Like, George Lucas didn't, I've always said, George Lucas didn't ruin my childhood. He wasn't really a part of it that much. That was kind of a different deal there, too. Love to see a new slapstick comedy, Bowser Jr. Yeah, that would be good. Oh gosh, what was the one I saw? I saw a really good one on Hulu. It actually had Conan O'Brien was in it, who's the host for the Oscars tonight. Gosh, it was the one. It was like one of those 2000s movies where you have like a group that goes to a group that's like on a buddy trip, like one of those road trip comedies. Like, those were always really big when I was in college. Euro Trip and Road Trip and all those other ones and stuff. Those were huge. But yeah, which one was it? Was that the one it was called? No, I don't think it was that one. Oh gosh, I don't remember what it was. Yeah. Let's see. It was on Paramount or something. I don't even. There's so many of these apps these days. I don't remember what it was, but it was really good. When I think of it, I'll put it on social media. It was something about, like, it was called like Do Not Touch or something like that, and it just had these 3 characters, and they had great chemistry, and it was really funny, and it was just kind of like, basically the concept was you put like these like mid-tier, like millennial or early Gen Alpha characters in a situation where they're treasure hunting in the woods or something, and just how absurd it gets. I thought it was hysterical. Like, it's the funniest movie I've seen in a while. And I know comedy is subjective. Like, I mean, I remember I had a teammate when I was on the rowing team. He suggested Me, Myself, and Irene, and he says, "Oh, it's the funniest movie ever." And I saw it. I was like, "Man, this movie sucks." Like, man, I don't know what he saw from it. I think he was just trolling me to make me watch something awful. So that was probably what was happening there. But I don't know. We'll see if that's a different one there too. Yeah. Oh, that trailer. Yeah, the Working Man trailer during the race today. Yeah, that was the one that reminded me of it. But yeah, any rate. Let's see. Okay. Actually, what's this? I don't know which category. Actually, this is a good question. I'm just going to read this one off. I don't know which one. I think this is in just the NASCAR category. How many different makes of cars were driven in NASCAR's first sanctioned race? This is actually a good question. I'll pick whichever is the best category after this. I don't know which one's the leader. Definitely let me know which one it is. But we're looking for a number. Let me read this again. How many different makes of cars were driven in NASCAR's first sanctioned race? Don't look it up. Try to guess it. We're looking for a number. How many different makes of cars were driven in NASCAR's first sanctioned race? Oh, yeah, Zucker Brothers comedies. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And again, Me, Myself, and Irene, like, I'm not against Jim Carrey. I think Jim Carrey is hilarious. Like, I mean, I had a classmate in grade school that reminded me so much of him, and it was very much of that time. So yeah, I mean, Ace Ventura, The Mask, I mean, all those others, those are just, yeah, classics for sure, for sure. And of course, everybody likes the Truman Show. I mean, even though that's, a different kind of comedy. How many different makes of cars, or I've heard it being argued as a tragedy, which is a pretty compelling argument too. How many different makes of cars were driven in NASCAR's first sanctioned race? My original plan was I was going to have the Oscars playing in the background and just react just on the visuals to what was happening while I was doing the stream, but I couldn't get that to work. We had a problem with our box or something like that wasn't working right there. Glad I didn't, because I had plenty enough to talk about the race. Didn't really need the distraction. But yeah, I don't know. How many different makes of cars were driven in NASCAR's first sanctioned race? Yeah, tell us the makes when you're done with the question. That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good point. Let me pull that up. Alrighty, so here we go. Here's the answer. How many different makes of cars were driven in NASCAR's first sanctioned race? The answer is 9. 9. Jude Fernandez got it. Desert Fox got it. Did anybody else? Yeah, Desert Fox, Jude Fernandez. I think you two got it there as well. Flo and No Other Land. I haven't seen those two, so I can't say one way or the other. The Brutalist is the only one I've seen. For those of you sticking around here, I could spoil it here in a little bit. We'll have that be our Oscars crossover here. Where is it? Okay. Alrighty. Let's see. Look for, I guess we're talking about literally the first race at Charlotte in 1949. I'd assume that's what we're talking about. Let me stick it out. Okay, we'll find out. That's a good question to see which ones, which manufacturers were in it. Alrighty. So we'll go to June 19th, 1949. All right, here we go. Here we go. For those of you counting at home. So according to Racing Reference, at least what I'm looking at here, Buick is 1, Cadillac 2, Chrysler 3, Ford 4, Hudson 5, Kaiser 6, Lincoln 7, Mercury 8, Oldsmobile 9. There it is. There's your 9. Buick, Cadillac, Chrysler, Ford, Hudson, Kaiser, Lincoln, Mercury, Oldsmobile. There you go. There you go. Very interesting. Very interesting. Which one was the, it was, this is the one that had the actual disqualification in it. And I believe, it looks like Ford was by far the most common. It was the last place finisher. Lincoln won the race there with Jim Roper. Yeah, no Chevrolets. Yeah, no Chevrolets. Chevrolet's history in the sport's interesting too. So that's another one to look at the same time. Yeah, didn't expect Mercury. I didn't expect Kaiser. Yeah, John Barker's Kaiser got 15th out of 33. So there's another one there too. But yeah, different era in the manufacturer sphere. So yeah, so there we go. Which category was leading? I think this was just from the NASCAR one. Yeah, that is a good question. Very good. Let's see. Desert Fox, a big RoboCop fan? Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, heck, the first one is, it's just classic. I haven't seen the later ones in a while, but, yeah. I think I did a video where, yeah, you've seen some of the other videos on this shelf. I know I've taken some pictures. It's on the third channel that I have some of my favorite soundtracks as well. Let's see. Let's see. Alrighty. Let me see here. We could just stick with this category if that works, because I think this is pretty good. There we go. Looks like it was a tie between drivers and wild card. Okay, let's do a drivers. Yeah, this is in the NASCAR category, was the last one I did. So we'll do a drivers question, and we'll do a wild card one, probably to wrap things up on here. Let's see. Here's a good question. Next question. This is under the drivers category, so you're looking for a driver's name. What Southern 500 winner was the first driver to average over 100 miles per hour? What Southern 500 winner was the first driver to average over 100 miles per hour? I always ask the chat which one they want, but never ask the trivia machine. You know, it's a point. I mean, I kind of just slipped my thumb there on the NASCAR one, but there you go. But hey, it's all about the viewers. The machine plays a very important role in the show. It definitely does. It is respected as such. It's even got its own little pouch off the screen here that I put it in after each show. What Southern 500 winner was the first driver to average over 100 miles per hour? Tricky. Don't look it up. Try to guess. You got a lot of good guesses here. We got some from the later eras. We got some from the earlier one. We got Fonnie Flock, Curtis Turner, Tiny Lund, Bill Elliott, Fireball Roberts, Richard Petty, Ned Jarrett, Darrell Waltrip, David Pearson. All good guesses. Fred Lorenzen. This is a good one. You got some good questions here. I didn't watch, a lot of Disney Channel movies. I know there's the generation after me seems to be very big on that. That wasn't really... See, my generation was much more about the Disney Renaissance. And I remember getting out of school, in 94, and that's when The Lion King came out. And, of course, that was a big deal. I know the live-action Disney movies are very different from all that. I mean, Defunct Land, I'm sure, can go into that way more than I could. But, yeah. What Southern 500 winner was the first driver to average over 100 miles per hour? The answer is Speedy Thompson. That's appropriate. Speedy Thompson is the correct answer. Yeah, okay, I'm with you, Beast of Metal. Yeah, Kyle Busch he was trying. He was doing the best he could out there. Bell definitely had a faster car during that run, but Bell didn't want to wreck him. He didn't want to move him, and he was trying to just drive around him, which he ultimately did. It was a good battle up there. I remember Ricky Rudd trying the same thing at Sears Point on old tires, trying to hold Tony Stewart off. It's not a good position to be in. Actually, last year at Sears Point, we saw that with the battle that Chris Buescher had, trying to hold off Larson and Truex, and ultimately Truex getting by, running out of gas, and Larson winning. That's great. That's one of the best things on that. But yeah, Speedy Thompson is the correct answer. Who is Speedy Thompson? I believe he won in the 46. I think he has one of the only wins for that number in that era. Born 1926, died in 1972. I do have to look this up here. Was it? Oh, he had 20 wins. Yeah, he had 20 wins. It wasn't just that. Raced from 1950 to 1971. Think of all the changes in that era. Wow. From the first Daytona 500, and I mean, back, well before the Daytona's even being built, really, to it being a big factor in this. Won his last race for the Wood Brothers at Richmond in 1960. But yeah, he drove his own number 46 car. He won the Southern 500 with that in 1957. Yeah. Oh, that may be another subject for a video one of these days. We'll see. I'm very excited about this one I'm working on now, but I'm always looking at other stuff here to cover. We've done a couple things on the earlier eras of the sport. Certainly the, what was that? The Neil Soapy Castles video for sure. But we'll see. But Speedy Thompson is the correct answer. So there you go. And ready. Okay, not that one. And let's see, what was it? I think wild card. We'll do a wild card question here as well. Okay, not that one. Not that one. That's too obvious. No, that one is too. Oh yeah, I think we did that one. I remember that. This one's kind of challenging. Okay, here we go. This was kind of a middle challenging one. Who drove the Hasbro Tonka car in a September 1997 Winston Cup race? Who drove the Hasbro Tonka car in a September 1997 Winston Cup race? It's just me or the Chevys get better this season. Sure looked that way. Chevys seem to have this race pretty firmly in their back pocket, the first half of it, with Kyle Busch and Van Gisbergen looking so well. But, Christopher Bell is just, he's determined to not be overlooked. And, I was saying it to Last Bro at the end of the race, when it came down to, when Kyle Busch got scooted out of the way there, and it was down to Bell, Reddick, and Byron, I said, that could well be 3 of your top 4 in the championship race this year. It could be. I mean, depending on how things take off. I know that only one of them had won, 2 of them had already won to this point. It's pretty easy to say. And Reddick, I'm sure, is going to be on his way to winning something at this point. We got Homestead coming up even in the spring. He could very well back up what he did last fall. We'll find out. Who drove the Hasbro Tonka car in a September 1997 Winston Cup race? All right, let's get down here. I guess this is for Kenny Irwin, Mike Skinner, Lake Speed, Robert Presley, Mike Green, Jeff Green, Kyle Petty, Wally Dallenbach, all over the place. Several good guesses. The Hasbro sponsorship, I see where Kyle Petty is coming from here. But there you go. But I believe the others have it here. Who drove the Hasbro car in a September 97 Winston Cup race? That, of course, was Kenny Irwin Jr., the late, great Kenny Irwin Jr., driving the number 27, the former Elton Sawyer ride, the one that had a Yates engine in it. Started outside pole next to Bill Elliott at Richmond. Kenny Irwin getting the groundwork there for him. But yes, Kenny Irwin is the correct answer. Charles Peterson Jr., Beanboy 89, Glenn 7000, you all got it. Beast of Metal 1989, you as well. And there you go. Hey there, Logan. Thank you for tuning in. Blair Motorsports. Thank you, Bowser Jr. XD. Yes, the Blair Motorsports car. The former Junior Johnson 27, the Blair entry that struggled for sponsorship as much as they did. And, yeah, there we go. Let's go back to the NASCAR category again. We'll wrap up here in a little bit. We'll do that. Let's see. Not that. That's easy. Okay. Ooh, okay. Excuse me. Alrighty. Actually, we'll just do this one here to wrap up. We'll do one more question. This one's actually a challenging one, so we'll end on this one. What is the worldwide award given to lifelong contributions to motor racing? It's got a name. Don't look it up. Try to guess it here. This one's a bit of a challenge. What's the worldwide award given to lifelong contributions to motor racing? Charles Peterson, you're right. Yep, that's right. A Hasbro toy. So there you go. That is a good catch. Good catch. What's the worldwide award given to lifelong contributions to motor racing? That is the question. Last one for this evening. Hope you've enjoyed the show tonight. Feels like there was a lot of energy here as well. There should be because, again, good weekend of racing. I think a good lead-in to the West Coast swing here. And ready. Scott Speed, Lake Speed. Yeah, there you go. Awesome McCool name. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Worth McMillions, another one that I always like from the sports history about like having crazy names there, Beast of Metal. So yeah, that's another fun one too. Oh, Charles Peterson Jr., the High School Musical ones. Yeah, that's way after my time. Power Rangers was kind of after my time. That's how far back I go. So, yeah, I remember having younger cousins that were into that, but no, that one missed me. Same with Hey Arnold on the Nicktoons. The original Nicktoons, Doug, Rugrats, Ren and Stimpy, Rocko's Modern Life, even Real Monsters to an extent. Yeah, those were ones I remember a lot more. But yeah, once we got into, I think Hey Arnold was kind of the demarcation. There's a lot of things I could think of where I was into them, and then there was something that just came up. It's like, okay, no, this is kind of over. Like with the Disney Renaissance, it was Pocahontas, and I think a lot of people, well, actually, I'm not going to presume that. I don't think a lot of people would agree on that because there's a lot of people like Hunchback of Notre Dame and all that. I don't remember that one very well. But yeah, I mean, I remember Little Mermaid, I remember Aladdin, I remember Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, and it's like, wow, these are actually pretty well produced. Hans Zimmer did music at The Lion King, and that was really cool. But then, like, once, yeah, Pocahontas, and it was kind of like, okay, yeah, I'm not really, this is kind of mid. And then, yeah, it's kind of like with Thomas the Tank Engine. I remember following the model series, but once it got to the narrow gauge engines, and I know they're in the books, and I guess those seasons, according to like Unlucky Tug's channel, like those seasons are the ones where like the production quality really went up and it looks really cool. I couldn't keep up with it at that point. That was kind of my separation there. So yeah, everything kind of, some things just have interest. You kind of get it to a certain point, and then it's like, yeah, you kind of do something else. I haven't followed the Ninja Turtles for a little while, but that goes way back. That's like 89, 90, and that was, I don't remember that being too long either. So like certainly the newer generations of all that, that's way beyond me. That's way beyond. But yeah. So what, back to the question, what's the worldwide award given to lifelong contributions to motor racing? Let's see what the guesses are here. Let's see. Oh, no, I did not miss out on Rocco's Modern Life. I did miss out on Invader Zim. Yeah. Oh, the original model series of Thomas Tank Engine is it. No. Once they started all that stuff, the Magic Railroad, and then the later stuff where they did like the animated faces, I never minded about the faces. You like the models. The models are cool. Like it's the way it's designed and the coziness of it. And then like, the old Ringo Starr versus the George Carlin narrated ones. That was great. But yeah, anything kind of after that, nah. I remember the Ertl Thomas Tank. I got to bring these on the show one of these days. I still have them somewhere. Like, oh gosh, oh man, back in the day, if it was some of the coolest stuff, right before NASCAR would be the Ertl Thomas the Tank Engine diecast, where they didn't, they were just made by, I'm holding it like this because I remember they would be like really long. They wouldn't, bend or move or anything like that, but they were kind of cool. And the Micro Machines, oh man, Super Van City, all that stuff. Oh, that was the best. And then when I got into NASCAR and Micro Machines did NASCAR, and you could get Derek Cope and Richard Petty and Ken Schrader, and oh, that was the best. That was like 92, 90. Well, it had to be 92. They wouldn't do Richard Petty 93 unless they did it later. I think it was 92 still. Yeah. Oh, that was the best. Absolutely the best. Chalk Zone. Oh, that's way after me. I don't even know that one. Oh, we have the clearance on tech inspection. 45, 4 in the 45 to R&D. Yeah, I don't like Hey Arnold. I thought Hey Arnold was kind of, I don't know. I mean, he's like this. I didn't think he was a very likable character. Like I know why the NFL players were talking about it because they kept calling him a football head. I figured that was kind of the thing. I always found it kind of I didn't like it. It's not everybody's thing. I didn't think it was very good, but that's I'm sure there's people that are fans of it that are not fans of ones I liked. Let's see. Beast of Metal, I like it. Yeah. Oh goodness. Yeah, Thomas the Magic Railroad. I mean, that's the thing. See, here's I was planning on doing like a Thomas the Tank Engine episode if the Atlanta races were particularly awful, because I was going to say, okay, look, if these races are terrible, I'm just going to talk about anything but NASCAR for a stream, and that was going to be my idea. But I was thinking about this, the thing with Thomas the Tank Engine that it's hard to explain to sometimes is that it was never about like good guys and bad guys. Like they did like that Tugs spinoff show that I hear about on there, and it kind of did that, and that was never like that. Thomas Tank Engine it was almost like The Office. It was more like these are people that are coworkers and they sometimes don't get along, and then sometimes they have to kind of reconcile things. It was kind of like that. It's kind of a strange comparison, but if you really start thinking about it, That's kind of the way it felt to me. And so when you started having these other characters that were around it and they weren't like the main group, like I didn't really care about that, all that much. And it was never, and it was never about like magic necessarily. I know they did the Shining Time Station thing, but they weren't like magical characters. They weren't like magical, creatures. It was like World War II era England. Like that was the thing, basically. That's when, these were written. That was the whole concept of it. Like, okay, the engines talked and they had, human characters communicate with them, but there was never like, this was an era before lore. Like lore is such a heavy word these days. Everything's got to have like chapters of it, like a video game or a movie or a book, or I mean, even a book itself, like it's got to have other context to it. Like, it's like, not everything has to be like a homework assignment here, people. Like it could just be, the guy talks to the engine and the engine says this and that's it. It doesn't mean anything more than that. And that was always the thing that was fun with it there. And I think it's so weird watching the newer Thomas the Tank Engine episodes where the Fat Controller is just kind of an imbecile. Like he's not, back in the old episodes, that music played up, somebody screwed up. Like, it was actually a threat to get sent away and all that. It's like, okay, that was actually really cool. There was something where there was an honor system. There was a something that was going on there. But then then they had songs. They didn't do songs back in the show. They had music. They would have great music in the background that everybody remembers, but they wouldn't like sing. Like, there was an opening theme, but it didn't have words, but then they did all this stuff later. I'm like, I don't know. But I mean, it's a different time. Maybe that just became more in vogue, but those older ones, yeah, it's very, so different, By the way, what is the worldwide award given to lifelong contributions to motor racing? Let's get this answer here before I forget it again. The answer is the Gregor Grant Award. I would say Gregor Gant Award. The Gregor Grant Award is the answer. What's the lore with Jeff Gordon's? Yeah, exactly. There you go. And the trains would be rewarded with a new coat of paint. Yeah, that was cool. That was fine. Yeah. No. Thank you. Good. I'm glad I'm not the only one against this lore thing. I remember, it's like things don't, I remember explaining, here's another show I love that didn't fall into that trap, was The Adventures of Pete and Pete. Oh, loved it. Classic Nickelodeon shows there. Again, I have kids one day, I'm going to be showing them that because it's such a wonderful show. And, me and my younger brother, we identified with the characters right away, so it was an easy attraction on that. But yeah, I mean, that was a show where it could have got completely lost with lore. Like, there's the mother has a plate in her head. It's like, well, what's the story with that? Something happened when she was younger. Is there a like complex lore to it? No, there isn't. It's like, Artie's the strongest man in the world. Why is he in this New Jersey town? Who knows? We're just going to kind of go with it. Like, that was great. That's an option in storytelling. Things could just happen, and that's fine because it's fiction and you can have anything happen. It's just, I don't know. I mean, I guess you can't have everything happen. You have to have some rules in general, but rules aren't lore. You have some defining thing in the universe here, and you want to have this world of things happen. I mean, I've always struggled writing fiction. That's why I'm so much more attracted to writing nonfiction, even in my YouTube videos. Some people can just pop off on stories really easy, and I envy that, much as I do with like people that are able to draw comics and stuff and do that really well. That's not my wheelhouse at all. But people that can do that, it's great. It's a skill, and not everybody can do it. But yeah, that was a big one there too. Did anybody guess the Gregor Gant Award? I don't know if anybody did. Gregor Grant. Yeah, it makes things sound important. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's see. About as good as Cat Dog. Cat Dog's okay. I remember that a bit. It's like angry. I think I compare it to Angry Beavers. I was the older brother. The blonde beaver was always such a dick in that show. And I don't know. I mean, I get that's the idea. Like it's the Angry Beavers, but I don't know. I didn't like that. I don't like that smooth talking. Oh, I'm the cool guy. You're the goofy guy. And I'm the cool one. And aren't you so goofy? Oh, I hate. That's not fun to me. That's just silly. Like, come on. You have all these characters. They're all flawed in their own ways. Yeah, Rocco's Modern Life's a great example of that. You got Rocco with his temper. You got Filbert that's like a hypochondriac. You got Heifer who's gluttonous. It's great, and they're all but they're all endearing, and they all kind of work with each other and stuff, and which is cool. Like that's a bit closer to the way things really are. I'm not saying everything has to be, but that just kind of makes it more entertaining. So yeah, I don't know. Oh yeah, I didn't read on the. I don't think anybody guessed the Gregor Grant Award. Did anybody get that? The answers are probably way up the page here. Lifetime Achievement Award, True Value Man of the Year, JD Power, Motorsports Appreciation, Smokey Unic Award, the Oscars, National Motorsports Press Association. Yeah, I don't think anybody got that. That's when I started talking about Nickelodeon shows. It was way back there. Yeah. No, the Gregor Grant Award. Gregor Grant Award. Yeah, that's the first time I've heard that. I'm gonna leave it there because I don't think a question can get harder than that tonight. Let's see. Yeah, I think we got sidetracked. Nobody got the question. Yeah, that's exactly it. Oh yeah. Rest in peace to Michelle Trachtenberg, by the way, too. That was sad news. And Gene Hackman too. I know Gene Hackman wasn't on Pete and Pete, but those are two that I grew up. I mean, well, not just me. I mean, obviously, so many people grew up with on there. So that's awful. I imagine. Well, we'll be catching up on the Oscars here tonight. I imagine they say something about it. I heard Morgan Freeman's going to say some words for Gene Hackman, and hopefully Michelle Trachtenberg makes the tribute reel there as well. So we'll see. Yeah, that was sad. That was sad. Let's see. I hate to say it, but Cars has an obtusely lore-obsessed fan base. I saw that one video where the guy did like all the car puns, but made it look like it was like a British documentary from the 90s, from like, not the 90s, I guess even older than that. That's hilarious. I don't know how much of that was real or not, but yeah. Didn't know Gene Hackman met Tim Richmond. I didn't either. That's a new one on me. Yeah. Alrighty. Yeah, Angry Beavers. Yeah, okay. Yeah, but see again, that's kind of the cool thing. I mean, it's like early Cartoon Network. They did so many different shows that had so many different tones that you're gonna have ones that everybody's, some people are gonna not like ones, some people are gonna like others, and those are just not gonna cross over, which is cool, which is fine. It's good that they had that many different things back then. So that was always fun. Oh yeah, like the yeah, Beast of Metal. I like that, the deconstruction of the slick operator character. Yeah, no, I'm with you there too. Yeah, no, that would be fun that would be interesting to see. It just doesn't seem like it is done in films either, but that's all a part of it there too. Let's see. Oh goodness, Michael Jensen. I don't mean to miss your super chat here as well. Thank you for $10. Goodness, thank you. Just got home. Sorry if you covered this. Great day for Jordan Anderson racing. Top 10 for Perkins. Any idea what happened to Austin Green? He was 13th with 4 to go and finished 27th-ish. I don't know that Green recovered that well. So Michael, thank you for giving me a heads up on that. We did talk about Blaine Perkins a bit earlier, and the career that he's had to this point, and trying to kind of take the next step here with the Jordan Anderson team. So yes, congratulations to them. And I share your frustration with Austin Green. I did mention him as well. I wasn't sure if he was working with the Peterson team or not, but he did seem a bit off this year compared to last year. I mean, he did so well last year; it doesn't really leave much of a margin for error there. But I didn't know that he recovered that well. I know that he was coming off pit road and losing a lap at one point, and it looked like he was going to be well back in the roster there. But yeah, I didn't see him drop back at the end. Again, another thing. It does show that there's still room to be done on the production side there, especially the camera work here. But hopefully things turn around on that end. Jimmy Neutron, that's pretty far after this too. Yeah, that's another one. Let's see. Did I got laser? Yeah, I see two here. I got Michael Jensen's. I got Laser Bros. I think I'm caught up. Beast of Metal. If I missed somebody's super chat, definitely let me know, and I'll catch that. I think I only got these two, so I do appreciate it there. Let me make sure I got both there. I think that's all I'm seeing here, so that's good. Excellent. Okay, well, I don't want to cut off there without getting those caught up. So, yeah, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and just wrap up here at this point, and catch up. But, yeah, I hope you enjoyed the show tonight. A little bit of off topic there, at the same time, and we'll, check out, all that too. Maybe we'll do some other, non-NASCAR streams here along the way and, have some fun with that too. But, yeah. Oh, garbage plate. Yeah, I see your comment there on the booth there too. Yeah, yeah. There's probably is some production meddling there that's a factor in there. It's a good point there, garbage plate, but we'll see if that's going to be the story there as well. Because yeah, maybe something could be tweaked. I don't know. It just feels like there's it's just uncoordinated, and I don't know exactly what where the weak spot is there, because it feels like all three need to adjust something. I mean, I get it. I remember being in rowing and you're trying, the boat's unbalanced, you're trying this and you're trying that, you're bringing the oar up, you're bringing it down, you're trying this, everything, and the boat's just still flopping around like a dead fish. It's not a fun position to be in, and it comes across. People can see it, but hopefully things turn around on that end there too. So tell you what, so I'm going to wrap up here for the show here tonight. I went to Pogress's page, and he still did the Cup Tech Complete update here half hour ago. No issues. Bell is the winner. Gregson and Reddick's cars to R&D for additional tech. We did see that in the comments here earlier, so thank you for the heads up on that as well. So yeah, congratulations, Christopher Bell, for the victory. The article is going to be on Connor Zilisch tonight. We'll get that up later this evening. And yeah, that will be it on this side here. So let me get this pulled up here in the meantime. We'll do it this way here. This will be a way that makes a little bit more sense. There we go. All righty. So that will do it for the show this week, folks. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. In the meanwhile, my Patreon is patreon.com/LascarOnBrock. My Twitter feed is @LascarOnBrock. Our next show is going to be next Sunday after the, the Cup Series race at Phoenix. We're going to be covering the Xfinity and the Cup Series action next week as we kick off this part, again, of the West Coast swing. Technically saw it today, I guess, if you start with Texas there. We'll have plenty of stuff to be talking about from that race weekend as well. We'll do some more trivia tonight, maybe talk more animation and movies here at the same time. Yeah, we'll jump right into that. That'll be next Sunday. And yeah, I think that's about all I have for this evening. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I hope you had a good time, and we'll see you all next time.